At this point in our discussion of Lewis, it would be helpful if we recapped where we are in the total chain of reasoning for Lewis. We've proven that naturalism is false and that it produces an ethical problem for us, even if it could be made out to be true. But why did we do this? We did this all in the service of proving the possibility of miracles. Not because we want to use miracles to prove the existence of God, because we saw really that until we prove that there is a supernatural, then miracles would be impossible. Why? Well, because remember, according to Lewis and our definition of miracle, a miracle is an outside interference in nature that causes nature to do things that nature wouldn't do on her own. So if there is no outside of nature, if naturalism is true, then there can be no miracles. Just like my friends and I, we used to like to play with the Ouija board. A Ouija board is supposed to be something through which spirits and ghosts who are dead are able to communicate with the living. But if there are no spirits or ghosts, then no matter what the Ouija board does, it won't be evidence of there being ghosts. And so miracles are signs. They're signs, and therefore they're meaningful communication of the supernatural into the natural world, and thereby ways of revealing what the whole shebang is about. Why live life? And this is the point of this course. And so what Lewis is aiming at is showing how miracles are possible, and then showing how the key miracle of Christianity, the incarnation, God becoming flesh and then dying for humans and rising from the dead, can become a rational clue as to the true meaning of life, and therefore letting us know what makes life worth living, which is the whole point of this course. And in order to clear the ground, you first have to prove that there is a God, there is a supernatural, and that therefore there is an outside of nature. And therefore nature, at least at this point, is possibly interfered with. But even if there is a God, even if the God is the creator of nature, if God is rational and has created laws by which nature goes, it could still be the case, argues a lot of people, that God could never produce a miracle. Now, why may not that be the case? Well, think, if these laws are how nature is supposed to work, and these laws are unbreakable, then by definition, even if God creates the world, God can't interfere into it. Nature can't be interfered because by definition, a miracle would violate the laws of nature. So Lewis's next task is to show how miracles actually do not violate the laws of nature, and the laws of science and nature do not preclude, therefore, the occurrence of interference with nature from the outside. So, of course, when we talk about violating the laws, we have to ask one crucial question. What is a scientific law? What is a law of nature? And there are three possible views you could hold. One is just, well, we've observed nature to obey a certain regularity. And in other words, every time I pick up this pen and release it, it falls toward the center of the earth. And we've observed this to happen over countless times, in countless ways, always in the same manner. And so therefore what a law is just simply this brute observed regularity. Crucial point about this particular view is the word brute. Brute just means there's no explanation for it. We don't know why nature works this way, it just does. Now, a moment's thought will show you how this kind of view cannot preclude nature from changing her mind or from going in a radically different way. Say you're driving on this road and you have a compass, so you know you're going south on this road. And you've been driving on this road for a long time, and that whole time the road has been going south. You might conclude, therefore, that it's going to continue to go south. But are you logical in that conclusion? Obviously not. There are plenty of roads that go south, but their ultimate destination is north. And so just because a road is going south doesn't mean, because you've observed this regularity, that that's what it's going to do in the future. In the same way, just because you've observed this regularity, this regular way in which nature behaves, doesn't mean that therefore nature won't change its behavior or make an exception in some particular case. So there obviously then the view of a law of nature is just simply the regular way in which nature behaves doesn't exclude her from behaving irregularly at some points. So this can't be the kind of thing that excludes miracles. A second way, which is actually closer to scientific fact, especially in quantum theory, is the idea that really nature at heart is chaotic. It doesn't observe any particular set standard laws that force her to do one thing over another. But just like the behavior of millions of people on the whole, there's this law of averages. And so thus, at the large scale, we can observe nature to always go in this way, on average. That's the key. It's a law of averages. A great example of this is actually, again, in quantum theory at the level of chemistry. We know that every atom has electrons, right? The smallest atom is a hydrogen atom, which only has one electron. And that one electron, obviously, has an orbit. On the old view of orbits, we thought of electrons like planets going around the sun. And so an electron is supposed to spin around the nucleus. But now we know that's not the behavior of an electron. In fact, what we have is more of a shell around the nucleus. And the shell is just this. It's just where we will observe the electron 90% of the time. So in other words, if we're looking for the hydrogen electron, this will be its orbit because it's the shell in which it will appear, the orbit in which it will appear 90% of the time. Now, according to current law then, there is a possibility, but it diminishes, that it will still be observed to be outside this shell. In fact, the possibility never diminishes to complete zero. So there's always this vanishing possibility that an electron, a hydrogen atom with an electron in this galaxy, its electron might be observed in the Andromeda galaxy in the next second. So what does that mean? Well, that's a law of averages, isn't it? There's no exclusion of their electron being 1 second here and the next second billions of light years away. And so as you can see, according to this particular view, a law of averages can exclude things that are exceptions, right? And miracles by definition are exceptions to these laws. And so therefore, neither of these two views can prevent, logically speaking, God from interfering with nature. Just like doctoring something, right? Normally when I flip a coin, it has a 50-50 chance of landing on heads. But say I flip a coin and 100 times, and 100 times in a row, it lands on heads. It never lands on tails in that 100 times. Then you have a right to say, well, that penny has been doctored, right? Somebody has fiddled with it. But that is exactly what a miracle is. It's a doctoring of nature, and you cannot talk about laws of averages except in normal situations. Miracles, by definition, are a doctoring, a deviation from the norm, and neither of these two views of law preclude deviations from the norm. The only possibility to make this argument, then, is this third view of laws, and probably the most widely held view, that laws of nature are things that constrain or determine the way events are going to occur, that laws are obeyed by nature, and there are no exceptions. There are no laws of averages or just a brute observed regularity. when something occurs in nature, it has to go according to these truths. Nature's, therefore, behavior behaves according to these necessary laws, necessary truths, like 2 plus 2 equaling 4. It'll never be the case that if you take two things in nature and another two things and you add them together, that somehow in the future you're going to get 5. That's a contradiction. That violates the laws of nature. And so the claim then is it's this that describes the laws of nature, this view, and a miracle by definition violates these laws by violating 2 plus 2 equaling 4. So in our next segment, we'll explain how Lewis says it's this actually very view of the laws of nature as necessary truths, as the way nature has to behave, that will not only not preclude miracles, but show that miracles must be possible. And we'll talk about that next.